Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
And welcome back to America's Heroes Group, this time with our roundtable and our partner, the Veterans Legislative Voice. December is AIDS Awareness and National Human Rights Month. Today is Saturday, December 10th, 2022. We got our holly out for the holidays. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have our partner on the line, Stephanie Kalota, U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class, and she's a veteran and founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I'm here, Sean.
So we got polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS. And
yes.
This is some legislation, I guess, coming out about this. There's some legislation coming out about this that we want to talk about. So first of all, tell us what that stuff is, and then why is it important?
So we commonly do call it PFAS. This also includes a wider realm of chemicals that kind of go under its umbrella, kind of like how Agent Orange is just the name for all of them, because there was actually all rainbows of colors for those agent chemicals, dioxins that were used. And so PFAS is most commonly found in firefighting foam to help with fires, electrical, gas, fuel, what have you, when it comes to things on airports and the airstrips.
So, like, and we're talking about material in fire, like fire retardant material? Is that what we're talking about?
No, it's in the firefighting foam.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, the chemicals used. They found that the chemicals are resistant to very high heat, grease, oil, moisture. It also has been used on nonstick pans, although they have not used them as much anymore. It's the reason why I use stainless steel and a bunch of other things. And they're like forever chemicals. They're always going to be there for, like diotoxins from Agent Orange. They're always going to be there, and they can also accumulate in the body for at least 4 years. And it can wreck a lot of things in the body because many people have been developing cancers that they believe is connected to PFAS.
So if you get a Teflon pan or something that has nonstick coating on it for Christmas, you have a gift, and then you have another gift that keeps on giving. And a bad
well,
one.
it's mostly when the actual outside liner starts to strip. You know how with nonstick pans you get the strip and you get it shredding. Yeah, that's when you throw it away. They use it very less anymore in the nonstick pan, so please don't go crazy, everybody.
Yeah, there was like a Consumer Reports study that came out recently that they did a test on it. You can look it up online. The Consumer Reports found they looked at the couple of major brands. They did not test positive for PFAS, but there were a couple of I guess we want to call it traditional looking pans that claimed they did not have any PFAS, but they actually found that in some nonstick pans. So you got to be very careful when you're looking at these. It's not like it's just completely eradicated from, cookware. And like you said, I particularly prefer stainless steel myself. That's the exact reason why I stick with stainless steel.
Yeah, I mean, I might use a nonstick pans very carefully, but the thing is that whenever they start to do all the wear and tear, then you throw it away and you get something new. So always do that. And for military people and for veterans, firefighting foam is used because military practices all the time. And they will practice with the actual things they need for exercises, for what may happen. And so there has been practices that they used with the actual firefighting foam, and it can saturate the ground, and then the groundwater goes to the water cisterns that's also collected on military bases. And it could be in the water that people drink, that work on the base, live on the base. So this is not just for military, it's also the families, because many families live on base. Or the water can also be very near to civilian populations with their water. So that's been something that's been a topic of concern. And since there's been so much that has already been done for burn pits and Gulf War veterans, for those toxic exposures, for many, the scope is now turning towards stateside toxic exposures, and PFAS is one of those that's becoming a hot topic right now.
Wow. So do you think like a lot of this contaminated water is what really grabs me a lot? Because do you think the things are leaching into the groundwater? And I'm not too familiar. I really don't know. I think Fort Jackson had. I think that's water is piped in when I was in Fort Jackson. But a lot of places we've seen this in recent months in the news about a lot of places like Camp Lejeune or so on, where there was contamination in drinking water. We had it here in Illinois and a veterans home. What's going on with the water? How is the water getting contaminated?
Well, a good example would be Red Hill, which is in Hawaii on Oahu, and the families that lived on Pearl Harbor and the surrounding military areas, they were all on one big water system, and there were still fuel storage used in the ground around these waters, and these are storage systems that were built before World War II, and of course they're getting old and degrading, and fuel made it into the water there, and a lot of people got sick. A lot of people, because if it's low enough, you can't tell when there's fuel in it when it's that low of concentration. But then that builds up, and a lot of children got sick. A lot of families had to deal with a lot of issues. And the biggest scandal about it is that the base commander basically told them, "Oh, you guys are crazy. There's no contamination of the water. Water's fine where he's at." And he got in a lot of trouble. And they've done congressional hearings covering that. And the Navy has finally said that they're going to close down the fuel storage because the state and Hawaii and Honolulu has been putting their foot down with the military and say, look, you do this, or we're not going with any of the other deals that we do with you guys. So that's what they finally came down to doing.
Man.
So
what are some of the health risks? What are some of the things people need to know about if they have exposure? Because long-term exposure can lead to a lot of different serious health risks besides cancer, a lot of things that could happen to your body.
Yes, and so it just depends on the type of chemical that you find that's in the water and contamination. I do encourage, you can actually go online and search. It's called Consumer Confidence Reports, and you can Google your base or the neighboring base and look those up. They even do them for the cities a lot of times, and that gives you an idea of what the testing and what may be in your water. You can also get test kits for that. There's been a handful of different things that have been popping up with PFAS, specifically thyroid cancer, bladder, esophageal. There's been, I'm trying to remember, I'm thinking of the thyroid. There's been other issues that's been going down that way, and I believe kidney is the other one. It's, because it's the water, that's the last organ it goes through.
Wow, I've even heard of stuff like they're saying that even the PFAS could even cause you to be have a weakened immune response, or it decreases the effectiveness of a lot of vaccines.
Yes, yeah, I've heard that one too. It's because if the body's already fighting an infection or an allergic attack or things like that, that I know personally, if you have an allergy attack like I do, I usually catch a cold or an infection while I'm trying to fight the allergy attack because it lowers your immune system.
Wow.
Yeah.
High blood pressure. I mean, things that you may not think about that, a lot of people have: high blood pressure, high cholesterol. That actually could be contributor or things that, which when you look at, and this is a whole other aside, not to go too far in a tangent, but when you look at the history of health in America over the last 100 years, we're living longer, which is good, a good thing. Our life expectancies are increasing, although since the pandemic they slightly decreased after the pandemic because of throw off the numbers. But overall, we've been in this trajectory of going up in life expectancy, but we're getting these crazy cancers and weird things. Some of it, we wonder if it's because our technology is just being able to detect these things sooner, which is helping us live longer. But are some of these things
I think it's that one. I think it's that one. And I also think it's because more people are seeing the doctor. More people are able to get treated thanks to Obamacare and other things. more people are getting more care, and because 100 years ago, only the rich and the upper middle class could see the doctor. You might try to, if your doctor allowed you to, take chickens instead of actual money, you could try that. But so the data from back then can be skewed. There was also not a whole lot of data collection. You know me, I'm the data nerd, and so that can skew. There's cancer registrations now that they'll put it on for locations so that they can watch cancer clusters, those type of things. So, yeah, it looks like all the numbers are going up, but I think it's because of screening. They're catching it better and more. I think that's really what's going on here.
But the second part of that, though, is that we have longer life expectancy, but we seem to be living sicker. So we have, widespread obesity. We have widespread, cancers. Like cancer is just a thing that everybody is just, that is exposed to. Everybody has some kind of connection or knows somebody, has a family member or a friend who has died or has cancer they have to overcome, whether it be breast cancer, thyroid cancer, something more serious like lymphoma. I mean, forget about, so the environment that we live in, we have to be really, really, really careful as to what's going into our bodies. And what we're getting more and more information about it, we're finding out that the stuff that we use every day that we take totally for granted can have long-term effects on your body.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I look back and think, because when I have lived in right next to Fort Lewis in Washington State, and I had I had stepkids, and I've taken my stepkids to the lakes there because there's a lot of beautiful, fun lakes to go to. And I think back, and I'm like, dang, I'm worried about the PFAS that may be in there and anything else that may be in there that you just don't know about. And it's kind of scary. It's an Aaron Brockovich kind of situation when you're living this issue. And it's pretty scary. I'd recently lost a friend who is 29-year veteran. He was about to retire, and he had been diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. He was a burn pits veteran. He was also on many of the bases that I've been on that is suspected to have PFAS contamination, and he was 47. And it's really hard to watch that happen, and then you feel like it's ticking time bomb, but then you're also like, I need to help, and we need to try to fix this. So then that way there's not another Sergeant First Class Jason Powell. He actually worked in you guys' neighboring area, in the Army Reserve Center in Darien. He was the retention NCO there, and so it's pretty hard. But we can pivot. We can pivot to Congress for the legislative stuff before I get emotional.
But the thing of it is, and I feel for you, and I think it's okay to be emotional. Let it out, man. We had a couple of guys and they were talking about some stuff, and I almost bawled out. To be honest with you, almost lost my military bearings for a second. To be honest with you, but the thing of it is that, and I want to preface this a little bit because I already know what some of the pushback would be to my question. There is the commercial interest in what's driving a lot of the contaminants that go into our everyday products, because it's not just things that are in our ground or soil or water, but even the products that we buy, like for example cookware, things along those lines, the toys and all that kind of different things. Businesses and corporations have an incentive to an extent, not to say that they're maliciously just looking the other way or being blind, but it's hard sometimes when your bottom line depends on selling a product and you think you have this wonder product that might be using new technology or new materials or new things, but maybe you didn't do the due diligence to look at the significant health risks, but particularly when it's long term, because you can do a study for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but a lot of this stuff takes 10, 20, 30 years to show up. When you die of asbestos poisoning, you don't die of asbestos poisoning like you don't eat some asbestos and then die the next day. That stuff may not show up till 20, 30 years later. And it's very hard to get the benefits when that happens too. Right. So we talk about all the time, or the business community talks about all the time. Well, there's too much regulation. There's too much stuff going on. Which in some cases, sure, that's true. But the reality is, no one else can really help protect us when you think about it, other than laws and regulations to kind of referee the businesses and corporations that come up with these brand ideas and brand products and all the things that make our life more convenient. But we need legislation to referee those types of things so that we're not poisoning ourselves slowly. And you have even the tobacco industry trying to tell you for years and years and years and decades that tobacco smoke is really not that bad. And then, and then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't sound half right. But because of that financial incentive, they almost want to believe that they have a product that's a wonderful product.
Yes.
So what is legislation being done about trying to referee these businesses and corporations to clean up our environment, to police these businesses and the contractors and the practices that we do every day that's actually hurting us?
Well, there is a handful of bills that are in the movement, and I'm focusing more that has at least passed one chamber of Congress. So there is the Federal PFAS Research Evaluation Act, and it's passed the House. We've got T-minus 3 weeks before it dies in this congressional session. So this one would actually get reports done from the national academies. And so then that would actually do intensive studies on the life cycle information on manufacture and use and disposal of products that contain PFAS. They're going to identify the potential human exposure sources. They're going to do the study of them with fate and transport on the breakdown of their products and pretty much how to dispose of them when they do identify these products, and then try to study how people are exposed, how people are going to get affected by these different things. And it's pretty in-depth, and there's words that I can't pronounce, but I'm trying to summarize for you on that. So that hopefully will get passed. It's passed the House. We're hoping the Senate, because it is it's a Democrat side bill. So hopefully with the majority and a little some on the Senate side, that they're going to be able to pass it soon. So that's one of the things that I'm worried about and looking forward to. The other one is preventing PFAS runoff at airports. This one has already passed the House and the Senate. Yeah, this one's already passed the House and the Senate. It's in the resolving differences. So basically there's a little bit of issues going on by line, probably things that need to be fixed by a few lawyers, periods, verbs, because those things can change funding significantly depending on how it's worded. So that's one of the things that's happened. And then it would actually provide reimbursements for airports that are eligible for it to actually get the equipment to prevent the runoff of PFAS with the firefighting foam. So this is basically like a rebate or just a benefits program so that airports will file for, they can get the reimbursement for doing this, and that way it's not out of their pocket as well.
Wow. When you mentioned airports, I had to say something because I worked at an airport, did a project at an airport for about 7 or 8 years. Got 2 airports, matter of fact, or here in Midway. And there's a lot of health concerns when it comes to dealing with jet fuel and also dealing with chemicals and things around airports that people don't realize. And really, all public transportation, even being next to expressways, there's a lot of studies that show that the fumes coming off of exhaust from cars and trucks living near expressways is all kinds of health risks and health issues that pop up around the residents around those areas and even around airports. This is my own personal. I don't want to go into too much detail because it is a very technical and specific topic, and you don't want to alarm people and give people the wrong ideas because we know how the internet works. We know how how word of mouth works. People start talking about stuff and they start spreading things that aren't true, and then they start saying stuff and exaggerating things. But a real fact I can say, not going into secondhand information or whatever, but a real fact from firsthand experience, I used to see and interview a lot of residents around airports here in Illinois. And one thing that struck me and my partner was that we found a high incidence and this incredibly weird stuff going on where people were sick. people that lived in the area for many, many, many years, sometimes second generation, were just, somebody, okay, this person committed suicide in this place, this person has cancer, that person has cancer, this person has some kind of weird disease, this person has this other weird disease. And it's like, okay, you're seeing tons and tons of people over and over again, and every time you turn around on a very consistent basis, there was a huge correlation between people that lived around airports and around public transportation and high correlations to serious and deadly disorders, particularly cancer and other types of weird, extremely rare diseases.
Yeah, and it's just like the burn pits with specific lung cancers that are so very rare. I completely believe it. There's the same about those that live around oil wells and oil rigs. Not many people may know this, but if you've ever been out west, and especially LA has at least 3 I know of oil rigs that are in urban areas, and there's actually cancer clusters around those areas.
Wow.
So it's really scary when those things are up going on there. I get angry with the EPA when I read these things. So yes, those things can happen. I used to work in the trucking world, and I was around those fumes a lot, and a lot of people do get sick from it, and it's pretty scary when you think about it. And so with those things, we just have to be with our due diligence of looking things up, looking the legitimate reports up, and making sure that it is well researched. Some of the things that I have problems with, at least for the consumer confidence reports, that's for the military, they do their own studies. And personally, when they do their own studies and investigations and things like that, I have a little bit of a lower confidence with it.
Yeah.
And so it's always best to try to get an outside source with those type of things. So trying to speak to your congresspeople about this and trying to tell them what you believe, what you think, and what's important to you as a constituent, because they'll listen, and those type of things will hopefully sink in, and they do make it to congressional hearings and congressional bills.
Right. I even think about guys on aircraft carriers. This from my experience working around airports, like thinking about people that work on aircraft carriers and the types of protection equipment they probably should be wearing, particularly when they're breathing all of that jet fuel, and those planes coming off and on, those jets coming off and on that carrier all day long.
Yeah, I used to work on ships with loading Army equipment on ships, and in those stow holds, we were in Kuwait, so then the vents could only run at half strength because it was so hot that the engines would burn out. So so the ventilation still wasn't that great. It's 140 degrees. 10 more inside the ship, and then all this fuel and exhaust happening inside those places. Yeah, I get myself checked multiple times. Oh, to bring up follow on for the burn pits, all veterans that you qualify with the burn pits and Gulf War, you can get a voluntary screening test for all things that they do identify that is associated and presumptive to burn pits and Gulf War. So call your primary care doctor, get that exam done. That way you can do all the screening that you have concerns with, and they'll get things ordered and tested.
Man, I appreciate you coming on our show again, and once again giving us great information. I think it's so critical that we learn these things. And stuff, like I said, these are things that we take for granted every single day, and they're not just specific to the veteran community. These are actually things that affect families that live around bases, families that live around major airports or things along those lines, any place where even corporations and businesses, downstream from a chemical plant, whatever it might be. These are things we have to take serious and talk to our legislators about. Appreciate you for doing this.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.